we're going to go ahead and give you guys our all-star starters and our reserves for the year. This is just our opinion, so take that with a grain of salt. If your favorite player is not on here, sorry, make your own list. uh, so I'll kick it off. Well, let's start with the East. So for the starters, I'm going to have, the classic. I'm going to have Joel Embiid, Giannis, and KD for the front court. And in the back court, I have Bradley Beal, and I have Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, I didn't expect the Jaylen Brown one. I didn't expect that one. All right, for my starters, or you want to go to your
name your starters and we'll talk about it.
All right, my starters was literally based off pretty much the votes I've seen pretty much, and I feel like that was kind of accurate for me. So it was Joel Embiid, Giannis, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal in the backcourt, and Kyrie Irving. Mm-hmm. So I kind of went by the numbers, and
yeah.
But for me, I felt like that was kind of accurate depiction.
I think Jaylen Brown's just having such an underrated season. I mean, he's right now. I think he's the best defender on the Celtics, and he's taking on the toughest defensive assignments every night, and still putting up 26, 5, and 3. Kyrie is also playing absolutely phenomenal. He's putting up 27, 4, and 5. I believe this is one of the highest points per game he's averaged in his entire career. So Kyrie's having an absolutely fantastic season. The only reason I don't have him as a starter is because he's missed 30% of the Nets games so far this season. And I just feel like Jaylen Brown, because he's been there for the entire season, he should get the nod. But spoiler alert, I do have Kyrie still in the actual reserves. So I'm just going to rattle off some quick stats. So Bradley Beal's averaging 33 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. Kevin Durant's averaging 29 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. Giannis is averaging 27 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. Joel Embiid is averaging 29 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists. And all these guys, for the most part, are no-brainers. And like I said earlier, Kyrie's averaging 27, 4, and 5. So a lot of these guys are just straight-up no-brainers for starters. We start to get into some questionable territory in the reserves. So, why don't you go ahead and kick it off with your reserves first? Because I think mine's going to be very, very surprising.
All right. So mine was Jason Tatum, James Harden, Zach LaVine, Jaylen Brown, Sabonis, Julius Randle. I need him there. And Trey Young. I didn't want to have Trey Young there, but he's having a good season, so I felt like I'll let it slide. I'm not a big Trey Young fan. If anyone remembers, I'm just not a big fan of his game, but I got to give credit where credit is due. He's having a good season, so I'll give him that last reserve spot.
Man, you really went off the deep end there, man. I did not expect that. Wow. Yeah. A lot of those guys are in my honorable mentions, man. They didn't even make my all-star list. That's crazy.
Really? For the East?
Yeah. All right. Well, let me go ahead and name my reserves. So I have Kyrie, I have James Harden, Jason Tatum. Those are the obvious ones. Domantas Sabonis, I think, is also kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I have Bam Adebayo. I have Chris Middleton, and I have
I forgot about Middleton. But I mean, Middleton, I'm not the craziest about, but he's having a good season too. Sorry, who's the last person?
I don't blame you, because while I was making this list, I straight up forgot about Middleton. I actually, instead of Middleton, I believe here I did have Julius Randle, or I think it was Colin. No, it was between Julius Randle and Zach LaVine for that final spot. But once I remembered Chris Middleton, which is so funny because he's having such a good season, but nobody even really remembers his impact. Well, like just from a casually looking over all the rosters and stuff like that, it kind of hits you all at once. You're like, oh my God, wait a minute, Chris Middleton's really good. I completely forgot about him. But Chris Middleton's averaging 20 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and he's shooting 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and 90% from the free throw line. So he's having a 50-40-90 season, one of the most efficient players in the league. I couldn't not give him a spot here. I couldn't. And Trey Young is averaging 26, 4, and 9. Bam Adebayo is averaging 29 and 5. Domantas Sabonis is averaging 21, 11, and 5. Tatum's averaging 27, 7, and 4, and James Harden's averaging 24, 6, and 11. So, there's a lot of – I do want to get into a lot of the honorable mentions, but go ahead and tell me why you exactly got Zach LaVine and some other people in there. Go over your list one more time. I want to hear it again.
All right. My list is Tatum, Harden, LaVine, Brown, Sabonis, Julius Randle, Trey Young.
Okay.
Now I want to go into Julius Randle first. Julius Randle is an absolute bucket this year. Okay, this man is averaging 22.7 points per game, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists. He's probably the main reason why the Knicks are as good as they are. And people were doubting him on the Knicks. Everyone kind of like, oh, Julius Randle won't ever really take a step. Like, he's a ball hog. He doesn't pass. He just, gets a rebound, goes out, tries to shoot his own shot, he's such a good, like, for me, he's such a good player. Like, he's averaging, so much on – I don't know this team is going to be, like, just a bad team, but, like, Julius Randle stepped up. He's getting triple-doubles. He's actually passing the ball and dishing it out. He's still a good rebounder, even for, like, a 6'8" power forward. I mean, for me, he's kind of – he's one of the best – I think he's a breakout, one of the best players this season. He's a breakout player this year. I'm really enjoying his game. He's kind of letting it come to him naturally compared to most other years. I think that for me, I think it just makes sense to have him in there compared to, no offense to Bam. As much as I enjoy Bam's game and as good as Bam is, I like the way Randall's been playing this season. I think overall as a player, I think Bam's a better player. But this season, at this moment, I'm taking Julius Randle in the All-Star game. Now, when we're building teams, it's a different thing. I'll take Bam over Julius. But I'm talking about All-Star game, I'm taking Julius for All-Star game.
I want Iguodala. No, but for real, I put Bam there just because he's anchoring that entire Miami defense. I feel like he's just kind of doing more for Miami than Julius Randle is. But Julius Randle, like I said, if Chris Middleton just didn't exist, if he was just kind of wiped off the face of the earth, I hope he's not. But if he just didn't exist, I would definitely have Julius Randle in this spot, in my opinion. It's obviously between him and Zach LaVine. I'll let you have an audible right here. If you wanna go ahead and slap Chris Middleton instead of anybody in your reserves, would you do it?
And I would take out Trey Young. I told you I'm not a big Trey Young fan. I think efficiently. See, I think Middleton's more efficient than Young. Young is one of the worst defenders in the league by defensive efficiency. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of this game. I don't like that little, like, I've never been a big fan of people just kind of, for me, it kind of feels like he just chucks up shots at times. He's a good passer, a little bit too flashy at times, but he's a good passer.
You sound like Steve right now.
But I just don't think he's not blowing me away with his game at the moment. The Hawks are still okay team. Nothing great, but I feel like Middleton and Giannis is like, that's like a 1-2 punch. You get hit in the inside by Giannis, kick it out to Middleton. He's splashing, 50, 40, 90. That's impressive. That's elite. So for me, I would take, if I could, I would put him over. I put Middleton over Trey Young. But if you want me to still explain my Zach LaVine, I can.
Go ahead. Go.
Zach LaVine, if we're just going off just stats wise, Beal's going to be most likely a starter based off voting. For me, Zach LaVine's putting up nearly identical stats with 27, 5, and 5. So for me, it's like, even though he's not on the most winningest team, neither is Beal. Beal's on, I think, the second worst team in the NBA record wise. Zach LaVine, the Bulls did just lose to the Wizards yesterday too. The Wizards.
And Zach LaVine missed a game winner, a wide open game winner. He beat Bradley Beal right at the 3-point line. It was wide open to the basket, but he missed it.
I'm not going to get on individual games, but I just think that Zach LaVine, he's been doing so scoring-wise, the game comes to him so naturally, and he's just gotten better and better as a scorer in Chicago. Obviously, I don't want to get on the aspect of the whole team because they do need more help around LaVine. But we're just talking about the individual player themselves. I think he's playing well enough to where I think he deserves some recognition. I think he deserves to be all-star this year. I mean, he's shooting 50%. You know, and then he's shooting. I mean, scoring 27 points per game. That's efficient, if you ask me. Like, you're shooting 50% and scoring 27 points. You're playing pretty well. So I feel like for me, LaVine, he's just got, for me, he's got it this year. So I would have him as an all-star. And I think last year he got snubbed as well too. So
yeah, LaVine's just, he's a product of what happened to Bradley Beal last year, just playing really good on a bad team, and people are like, well, he's only playing that good because he's on a bad team. No, Zach LaVine is actually very, very good. And he would be very, very good on a very, very good team. He's getting most of the attention from the offense every night, and he's still dropping 27. Like, that was the same argument I had for Beal last year, why he should have made it last year. He was getting the full attention of the defense, and he was still averaging 30, and now he's averaging 30 again. 33, actually. He actually gotten better from last year, even though the team got worse, but that's a different story. It's a different story. I do want to say I don't want to move on without mentioning some of the honorable mentions. One of them is Jimmy Butler. So Jimmy Butler is, typically he's somebody that you would put into the All-Star as a no-brainer because he is an All-Star level player. He's a very, very good player in this league. He's a star. But this season, he's just something, between injuries and COVID, he's just not playing great. Simple as that. He's averaging 18, 6, and 6, which are all right. But he's shooting 44% from the field. And he's actually shooting 0% from three. He hasn't hit a single three this season. He has not hit a single three this season. So, I love Jimmy Butler as a person and as a player, but, I left him out of this list because of the injuries, because of COVID, all that stuff just culminated in these numbers for Jimmy Butler, which, they will get better after the All-Star break. I no doubt about that. And even just next year, I do think Jimmy Butler will be back as an All-Star. I also want to bring up some other honorable mentions. Julius Randle, Colin Sexton. I had Zach LaVine in there. Gordon Hayward's actually been playing very, very well as well. So those are my honorable mentions for the East.
Yeah, my honorable mentions are like the same people, honestly. So I'm it's kind of how I feel too. So I didn't really have like an honorable mention like list, but like every person you said is pretty much like, yeah, I can see that as well. And also just for Jimmy Butler, I just feel like I haven't seen enough of Jimmy Butler to say he should be all-star this year. I feel like how many games he has not played, like I don't think he's played over 10 games.
I believe he's only played like 9 so far.
Yeah, so it's just not enough for me yet to really get behind Jimmy Butler, So I agree.
All right, so let's jump to the West. I think, once again, I have one person in here that other people probably aren't putting in here, but I do think he deserves it. So for the backcourt, I have Steph Curry and Donovan Mitchell. And for the front court, I have LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and Nikola Jokic for the starters.
So for me, I have Curry for the starter as point guard. I have Luka Doncic, then Kawhi, LeBron, and Jokic. So it's about the same thing, except I switched out my shooting guard. I'm surprised you chose Mitchell for the starting. I have him on my team. Spoiler alert, I have him on my all-star roster, but not as a starter. So why do you feel that he should start?
He's being so underrated right now, in my opinion. I think that, everybody's, if you just look at the votes, he's pretty far down the list. I think he's like 7 or whatever. I think he deserves to be way higher in the fan votes. Donovan Mitchell, he's leading the team that's, I believe they have one of the best records in the league right now, if not the best. But, Donovan Mitchell is leading a very, very good West team right now. I think he deserves a nod. I think he deserves a starter nod. Luka, I was considering giving it to him, but, a couple of his, three-point percentage hasn't been great this year, and his team just isn't performing up to par. He hasn't really elevated them to the level that you'd expect this year so far. Obviously, without him, they would be like bottom tier, absolutely bottom tier. But as of right now, as of recording this, I believe the Mavericks are like the 13th seed out west. That's just pretty bad so far. But I do want to say the West in general is just it's a bloodbath. I mean, literally, I believe that if the Suns drop 2 or 3 games, they could drop as low as the 12th or the 14th seed. Like, that's how close it is from about 4 to 14. It is insanely tight. It's a very tight race. And like Donovan Mitchell, just he's a part of that top 3 in the West that if he drops a couple of games, he's not going to drop to 14. So that's why I kind of put Donovan Mitchell in there. I want to reward the work he's put in this offseason, and I want to reward his team for winning.
Yeah, they actually still currently have the best record in the NBA. So a lot of credit does go to Mitchell because he really is – he is the leading charge of that team, and he's kind of the heart and soul of that team. And they're on a 4-game win streak, and it pretty much would not have done that without Mitchell. So I can see where you're coming from there, and I wouldn't mind if they would switch. I wouldn't mind if they switched Doncic to the bench reserves. Yeah.
I don't think Donovan Mitchell's going to get it, though, because of the fan vote taking up 30% and him being so low on the fan vote. I don't think he's going to make it, but just to throw out some numbers really quick. So Steph Curry is averaging 29, 5, and 6. He's a monster. Donovan Mitchell is averaging 23, 4, and 5. Luka Doncic is averaging 27, 8, and 9. So his numbers are better than Donovan Mitchell, so I understand why you did put him up there. Mm-hmm. LeBron's averaging 25, 7, and 7. Being a beast as usual. Kawhi's averaging 26, 6, and 5. And Nikola Jokic is averaging 27, 11, and 8.
That's some MVP numbers.
All right. We'll get into that on another podcast as well. Do you have anything else to say about Luka? Or
I mean, there was this one report recently where I think Zach Lowe said that all Luka does is whine and stuff like that. I don't like that narrative. I mean, Luka, he does take some hits in the paint. I like Luka. He's a good player. He's pretty much the driving force of that Mavericks team. Like you said, they would be a low-tier team if he was literally not on that team. So, I got to give credit where credit is due for Luka. He's trying his best, Whistle hasn't been the healthiest. What's his name?
Kristaps.
Kristaps Porzingis hasn't been the healthiest either. So, I give props to Luka for trying his best and where credit is due. Luka's trying his best. He's putting up as much as he can. So, his numbers drop from the 3-point percentage. He's got to take those threes because it seems like no one else will. So, that's why Luka. He's still my all-star starter.
I hate that whining narrative. I think it's just a really dumb narrative. Every player in the NBA whines. And if you expect a player who's at that level, who is extremely passionate for the game, if you expect everybody to play like Kawhi Leonard, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I've been watching basketball like my whole life, and I've seen players that are even more quote unquote whiny than Luka Doncic, that everyone's just like, oh, they're tough. Like, I don't know. It's a very strange line. I don't like that. That Zach Lowe's even kind of trying to start that narrative. I think it's absolutely. I think that's out of pocket, straight up.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and jump to the West reserves. I'll kick it off with, I have Luka. I have Damian Lillard, Paul George, Anthony Davis, Christian Wood, and then I have Devin Booker, and this last spot I debated for so long. But eventually I just gave it to Brandon Ingram.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
It was between him and one player, and it was racking my mind so bad, but eventually I just threw Brandon Ingram had slightly better stats, so I just threw him in there.
I'm trying to figure out who the other player is, but I'll read my reserves off.
Go ahead.
So my reserves are obviously AD, Damian Lillard, Paul George, Ja Morant. I'm feeling Ja this season. He's balling. Donovan Mitchell, Christian Wood, and Zion Williamson. I'm
Okay.
I'm falling a little bit into the hype. He's not bad. He's really good actually. Not the most impressive shooter at all, not at all. But like I'm starting to rock with Zion. I'm starting to see where the hype is starting to culminate from. I still think that the team can still do better. I feel like he can still do more, but yeah, that's my reserves.
Okay, I was deliberating between Brandon Ingram actually and DeMar DeRozan. And the reason I wanted to put DeMar is just because the Spurs are somehow in the playoff race again. And I feel like DeMar deserves a lot of credit. You know, he is kind of the de facto leader of the team. That's why I kind of wanted to put DeMar DeRozan. He's also being a little overlooked right now, but that's very interesting that you have John Morant in there. He's in my honorable mentions, but, you know, I think personally, I would have put even De'Aaron Fox above John Morant this year, in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah, let me rattle off some stats real quick from some of the dudes I picked. So Damian Lillard's averaging 29, 4, and 7. Paul George is averaging 24, 6, and 5. AD is averaging 22, 8, and 3. Christian Wood is averaging 22, 10, and 1. Devin Booker's averaging 23, 3, and 4. Brandon Ingram's averaging 24, 5, and 4. So why don't you go ahead and tell me, why'd you put Zion ahead of Brandon Ingram? Because they do have very similar stats. Their stats are
They
pretty.
do.
But
I just feel
what gave you
like
that push? What gave you that push?
for me, seeing it kind of from a more media based way, I kind of felt like for an All Star game, if I want to watch it for entertainment, because that's all it really is, it's kind of an entertainment kind of like thing. Um, I just feel like Zion would be very entertaining to watch in that kind of aspect. The fans are definitely more on Zion's side than Brandon Ingram. I think Ingram's a more skilled player. I personally think he has a more of an arsenal compared to Williamson at the moment. Um, but Zion, a lot of credit where credit is due. He's shooting nearly 60%, averaging 23 points, 7.2 rebounds, like about 3 assists almost. I mean, he's balling out. He's doing what he can. The Pelicans, like I said, they still need some work, and I feel like Zion can still do better from his standpoint. But like from a entertainment standpoint, if I really want to watch an All Star game with all these great players, I want to put Zion in there. I got to see him with the big stars. We saw Ingram as an All Star last year. I want to see Zion as an All Star this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean I can't hate on the Zion for All-Star pick. There's just so many good talent. There's so much good talent in the West. Even my honorable mentions sound like an All-Star reserve in their own. Let me go ahead and rattle some of them off. In my honorable mentions, Zion Williamson, Chris Paul, CJ McCollum, who I would have put in if he didn't get injured. Rudy Gobert, Jamal Murray, DeMar DeRozan, and De'Aaron Fox, and John Morant. But I do want to say, don't be surprised if Chris Paul makes that final slot instead of like Zion or Brandon Ingram. Because Chris Paul is actually averaging better numbers than he did last year, and his team is at the 4 seed. And coaches like to give it to players who are on winning teams when the coaches pick. So, depending on who the coaches pick, I could see Chris Paul sliding in there instead of one of these other guys, and then a big like snub debate happening. Could you actually? You had somebody else in there that I was kind of questioning. Who could you run back?
It was Ja Morant.
Yes. Yeah. So
I'm a big fan of this game. I didn't realize that they slipped out the playoffs. They were in the playoff picture at one point. Ja was, but obviously when he got injured, they did kind of drop a couple games. He hasn't really. I mean, when he came back and started playing again, he was impressive. Yeah. He doesn't have the greatest numbers. He's averaging 18.5 to 7.4 assists. But I mean,
his impact goes beyond those numbers.
Yeah, he is the leader of that team. When they play as well as they do is because Ja's playing well. Ja Morant he's so talented. For me, whenever, like I said, like you said, his effect on the game is bigger than the numbers. So for me, I kind of think that like when I watched him play, like when you watched them play last season, no one thought the Grizzlies were going to be even near the playoffs or sniff the playoffs, but he pushed that team to be nearly a playoff team. They lost, I think, in the play-in tournament, if I recall correctly. And then this year, I mean, right now, I think they're currently the 11th seed, but they're 9-10. If they win like 2 more games, they can literally get back into the playoffs. That's how close the playoffs is in the West. Just going to what you were saying earlier. But I just feel like Ja Morant, I mean, he's a talented player, a young talented player. People think he's like the next Russell Westbrook. I don't know if I'm going to say all that. I think he's a better shot than Russell at the moment.
He's more like the next. He's like a slower John Wall, in my opinion.
I can see that as well.
John Wall without as much speed.
I can see that. I like the way he's playing at the moment. You know, I know he's not playing on the best team and he's not playing with the greatest numbers, but like he's such an impact player. Like when he's on the floor, that team is significantly better. So I think for me, that's why he was one of my all-stars, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like Ja Morant, and I didn't put too much stock into the records. That's ultimately why I kept DeRozan out of my reserves. I didn't put too much stock into the records from like 4 to about 14. I didn't put too much stock into into what the record was of their team because, like I said, if the 4 seed at this point loses a couple games, they're possibly, out of the playoff picture entirely, which is ridiculous. That's how tight it is and how packed it is. So I didn't put too much stock into it. That's why I kind of put Brandon Ingram in there. And I just feel like, Brandon Ingram I feel like he's the leader of the Pelicans. They're kind of co-leading with Zion and Brandon Ingram, but Ingram's been doing it before Zion even got there. All right. So
mm-hmm. I see them. Sorry, you were saying something before you. I didn't mean to cut you off. You were saying how I see them lead. The way they lead, they kind of lead like they don't lead by actually like being a leader. They kind of lead by like talent more so. That's my biggest gripe with the Pelicans at the moment. I feel like there's no legitimate leader. Yes, Ingram and Zion lead by scoring and rebounding. They lead by our actions, but they're not really kind of moving pieces around. They need like a veteran presence, or they need just somebody to like take the reins and really start leading on the floor and on the court. But that's a whole different thing.
Like a vocal leader. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I've got. Those were our all-star predictions and all that, and that's it for the show. So thank you everybody once again for tuning into the Speak to the Sports podcast. If you enjoy weekly sports content and a roundup of the weekly news and discussion, just go ahead and click that subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, that's exactly what we do. And if you are listening on any type of podcasting app, follow us, rate us, review us, all that jazz. It helps us out a lot. We'll be back every week with the roundup of the news for the week, the sports news. And with that, I've been Bert.
Trey, as always.
And we will catch you guys next time on the Speak Truth Sports podcast.